There are two kinds of deals in this life. The ones you make with a bank, where the terms are printed in tiny, suffocating font, and every signature feels like you're signing away a small piece of your soul. And then there are the ones you make in empty rooms with women who look at you like they know every secret you've ever kept. I was about to find out the second kind was infinitely more expensive. The penthouse wasn't just an apartment. It was a declaration. A 2-story glass box perched atop the city's newest, most unapologetically modern skyscraper. From up here, the city wasn't a chaotic mess of traffic and noise. It was a silent, glittering circuit board. My circuit board. At 24, this was an absurd, reckless stretch. My graphic design business was finally taking off, but this was a leap of faith into a different stratosphere. One I wasn't sure I belonged in. The triple-paned glass means you won't hear a thing. Not a siren, not a helicopter. Complete serenity. Ava was the architect of this feeling. 40, maybe 42? She was dressed in a steel gray suit that probably cost more than my first car. Tailored so perfectly it looked less like clothing and more like a second skin. She moved through the vast, empty space not like she was selling it, but like she was graciously allowing it to be sold. Her heels clicked a sharp, authoritative rhythm on the polished concrete floors. We had been through the entire unit twice already. The kitchen with its marble island the size of a small car. The floating staircase that looked like a work of art. The terrace that made my stomach clench with a giddy vertigo. Now we were in the master bedroom. It was the heart of the penthouse. A cavernous room with a single wall of uninterrupted glass that overlooked the entire west side of the city. The late afternoon sun bled through it, casting long, dramatic shadows that made the room feel both immense and intimate. The only object in the space was a king-sized mattress, still wrapped in crackling plastic, sitting squarely in the center. "You're young, Leo," she said, her voice smooth, breaking the silence. She had stopped pacing and was now watching me. "What's the plan? Fill this place with wild parties." The way she said "wild parties" sounded less like a question and more like a suggestion wrapped in a challenge. I gave a nervous laugh. "Something like that. Or just enjoy the quiet." "Quiet is nice," she conceded, taking a step closer. "But a space like this, it begs to be filled. With life. With noise." Her eyes, a cool, intelligent blue, scanned my face, then drifted down my body and back up again. It wasn't lecherous. It was evaluative, like she was appraising an asset. The professional smile she had worn for the last hour was gone, replaced by a look of frank curiosity. My heart rate kicked up a notch. This was the final walkthrough. The papers were all but signed. All I had to do was nod, shake her hand, and walk away with the keys to my new life. But I was frozen. She had shifted the gravity in the room, and I was suddenly caught in her orbit. She turned away from me then and walked toward the bedroom's entrance. The door was a massive slab of dark oak, thick and imposing. I watched her, the clean lines of her suit, the confidence in her stride. She reached the door and pushed it. It swung shut with a heavy, satisfying whoosh, plunging the room into a muted silence. The sounds of the city, faint as they were, disappeared completely. Then came the sound that changed everything. A sharp, metallic click. She had twisted the lock. My blood went hot, then cold. I stared at her, my mouth suddenly dry. She turned around, a slow, predatory smile playing on her lips. It was the first genuine smile I'd seen from her, and it was terrifying. "Let's test the soundproofing," she said, her voice a low purr that seemed to vibrate in the still air. Every professional instinct I had, every logical neuron in my brain was screaming red flag. This was my real estate agent, a woman I barely knew. This deal was my entire future. But another, older instinct, something primal and stupid, was just listening, intrigued. Just as the silence stretched into something thick and heavy, a phone buzzed sharply from the windowsill where she'd left it. The screen lit up the dimming room, a beacon in the twilight. The name Marcus glowed for a moment, stark and demanding. She glanced at it, her smile tightening almost imperceptibly at the edges. With a flick of her thumb, she swiped the call away, silencing it. She didn't look back at the phone. Her gaze was locked on me. The interruption hadn't broken the tension. It had added a new, dangerous ingredient. Marcus, a husband, partner? The risk was no longer just professional. It was personal. I think I left my paperwork on the kitchen island. I stammered, the excuse sounding pathetic even to my own ears. It was a lie. My briefcase was in my car. But I needed an out. I took a half step toward the door, my body desperate to create distance, to break the spell. She didn't move an inch. She just watched me, that infuriatingly calm smile fixed in place. "Cute," she said. Then, she reached into the inner pocket of her sharp blazer and pulled out a single, thin keycard. She held it up between two long, manicured fingers. "This is the master keycard. The only one that works until the sale is final and the system is reset for you." She took a slow, deliberate step toward me, closing the small gap I had tried to create. Her eyes never left mine. "And it's in my pocket. Looks like you're not going anywhere just yet." She didn't keep me locked in that room. The moment she saw the genuine flicker of panic in my eyes, the realization that this game had suddenly become very real, she unlocked the door. "My apologies," she'd said, her voice once again cool and professional. "Sometimes the locking mechanism sticks. I'll have maintenance look at it." It was a seamless, perfect lie, delivered with a smile that made me feel like the crazy one. I'd stumbled out of that penthouse feeling like I'd just survived a near-miss car accident, my heart hammering a frantic rhythm against my ribs. For 3 days, I tried to forget it. I buried myself in work, staring at color palettes and font libraries until my eyes burned. But the memory of that click, of her smile, of the name Marcus on her phone, was a splinter under my skin. Couldn't dig it out. So when she called on the 4th day, her voice all business, suggesting we meet to double-check the custom cabinetry measurements, I heard the unspoken invitation beneath the professional veneer. And to my own astonishment, I agreed. This time, the penthouse felt different. It was night, around 9, and the space was no longer a bright, empty canvas of potential. It was a cave of shadows and soft, recessed light. Through the massive windows, the city was a breathtaking tapestry of gold and white lights. She must have had the power connected, because the air was cool and the silence was absolute. She was waiting in the kitchen, leaning against the marble island as if she owned the place. Which, in a way, she did. She'd swapped the power suit for a simple, dark silk blouse and tailored black trousers. No blazer. It was a subtle shift, but it changed everything. This wasn't a real estate agent. This was a woman. "Wine?" she asked, not waiting for an answer. She turned and retrieved an open bottle of red and 2 glasses from a newly installed wine fridge. The clink of the bottle against the glasses was the only sound. "I thought we were measuring cabinets," I said, trying to keep my voice light. "We are," she replied, pouring a generous amount into each glass. "But who says we can't be civilized while we do it?" She walked around the island toward me, her hips swaying slightly. As she passed me the glass, she let her hip brush against mine. It was a fleeting, almost imperceptible touch, but it sent a 1,000-volt charge straight through me. I didn't move. I barely breathed. The pretense of work evaporated. We never even looked at the cabinets. We stood there on opposite sides of the island, sipping wine in the dim light. She asked about my life, my work, my ambitions. Her questions were pointed, intelligent. She listened with an intensity that made me feel like I was the only person in the world. The tension from the other day was back, but it wasn't playful anymore. It was a heavy, palpable thing that hummed in the air between us. I found myself watching her mouth as she spoke, the way her fingers curled around the stem of her wine glass. I was falling, and I wasn't even trying to stop myself. "You'll need access for your contractors before the sale officially closes," she said, her voice dropping a little. She reached into her pocket and produced another keycard. Not the master key from before, but a temporary one. She slid it across the cool, smooth marble of the island. It stopped just inches from my hand. "In case they need to get in when I'm not here." Our eyes met over the top of our glasses. We both knew she wasn't talking about contractors. The keycard sat there between us, a small rectangle of white plastic that felt as significant as a signed confession. It was the physical manifestation of our secret. My fingers closed around it. The plastic was cool against my skin. I had just accepted the terms. She smiled, a slow, knowing smile, and started to walk around the island again, this time closing the distance between us for good. My heart was a drum against my ribs. This was it. The point of no return. Ding. The sound was soft, but in the total silence of the penthouse, it was as loud as a gunshot. We both froze, eyes wide. It was the elevator, arriving on our floor. My blood ran cold. Instinctively, she grabbed my arm, her fingers digging into my bicep, and pulled me back into the shadows of the kitchen, away from the direct line of sight from the front door. We stood motionless, a foot apart, our shared breath held tight in our chests. Then we heard them, footsteps, slow, heavy, methodical, walking down the polished concrete floor of the hallway. They were coming right for our door. Security, a foreman working late. My mind raced through the possibilities, each one worse than the last. The footsteps stopped directly outside. A silhouette appeared in the frosted glass panel next to the door. My stomach plunged. We were caught. A beat of pure, agonizing silence. Then, the footsteps started again, slowly receding down the hall until we could hear them no more. The adrenaline left me shaky. The spell was shattered, ripped apart by the reality of what we were doing, of what we were about to do. I had to get out of there. "I should go," I whispered, my voice hoarse. This time, she didn't try to stop me. The fear was still in her eyes, too. I walked to the door, the stolen keycard burning a hole in my pocket. My hand was on the handle when she spoke, her voice low and husky, barely a whisper. "The building's rooftop pool is closed for maintenance." I paused, my back to her. "Which means," she continued, "it's always empty after 10. The view from up there is even better than this." I turned, and she was looking right at me, her expression a complex mixture of fear and daring. It was a clear, unambiguous invitation. Time and a place. The choice was mine. The choice was no choice at all. An hour later, I was on the roof. The air up here was different, thin and cold, smelling of chlorine and the vast, empty night. The city sprawled below, a silent, jeweled blanket under a starless sky. The rooftop pool was a perfect rectangle of impossible blue, its underwater lights casting flickering, ghostly patterns on the surrounding deck. Closed for maintenance was a lie. It was pristine, perfect, and utterly deserted. It was a private world she had invited me into. I stood at the edge of the infinity pool, looking down 50 stories. My reflection stared back from the dark, still water, a stranger in a borrowed life. I had no business being here, and yet I couldn't have been anywhere else. When she arrived, she moved like a shadow. I didn't hear the door open, only sensed a shift in the air. I turned, and she was there, standing by a row of neatly folded towels. The silk blouse from before, her hair slightly undone by the breeze. The professional mask was gone completely now, replaced by a raw vulnerability that was more intoxicating than any practiced smile. "You came," she said. "It wasn't a question." "You knew I would," I replied, my voice steadier than I felt. The tension between us was no longer about seduction or a forbidden game. It was simpler, heavier. It was the gravity of two people who had stepped off a cliff and were waiting to see if they could fly. She walked toward me, stopping just a few feet away. We stood in silence, the quiet hum of the city our only soundtrack. The words were unnecessary. We had both made our decision the moment we stepped onto this roof. I was about to reach for her hand, to close the final distance between us, when the night shattered. Ava! I knew it. The voice was a roar, ripping through the serene quiet. A heavy metal door on the far side of the rooftop slammed open, and a man strode out onto the deck. He was tall, broad-shouldered, dressed in an expensive suit that looked rumpled with rage. It was Marcus. His face was a thundercloud of fury. His eyes found Ava, then flicked to me, filled with pure venom. My blood turned to ice. This wasn't footsteps in the hall. This was the monster from behind the curtain, stepping into the light. Disgrace. Scandal. For her, a messy public implosion. For me, the end of my career before it even began. He would crush me without a second thought. My assistant saw your car, he snarled, advancing on us. Sneaking into your new pet project after hours. And who the hell is this? He spat the last words at me, his eyes burning with a possessive fire. Ava was frozen, her face pale, her body rigid with a fear so profound it seemed to suck the air out of her. In that split second, I had a choice. I could retreat, mumble an apology, claim ignorance, and run, save myself, or I could step into the fire with her. It wasn't a choice. It was an instinct. As Marcus reached us, his hand shooting out to grab Ava's arm, I stepped forward, directly into his path, extending my own hand. Leo Hayes, I said, my voice shockingly calm. I'm so sorry to interrupt your evening. Ava was just giving me her professional opinion on whether this rooftop view justifies the premium price tag on my unit. We were just leaving. The lie was audacious, insane. I was positioning myself not as a boy she was seducing, but as a wealthy client, a peer. I was betting on his arrogance, his need to see his wife as a successful shark closing a big deal, not as a woman meeting a lover. He stopped, his grip still tight on her arm. He looked from my outstretched hand to my face, his eyes narrowing. For a long, heart-stopping moment, he appraised me. Then he let out a short, derisive scoff. He didn't shake my hand. He yanked Ava's arm. We're going. As he dragged her toward the door, she looked back over her shoulder at me. Her eyes were wide with shock, but beneath the fear, there was something else. A flicker of gratitude, a spark of awe. It was a silent, desperate acknowledgement. You saw him, and you didn't run. It was the first honest confession between us. Then they were gone, and the door slammed shut, leaving me alone in the ringing silence. The adrenaline drained away, replaced by a hollow dread. It was over. I had stepped into the fire and been left behind in the ashes. I stood there for 10 minutes, the cold starting to seep into my bones. It was time to go. Time to forget this, to salvage what was left of my life. My phone buzzed in my pocket. My hand was shaking as I pulled it out. A text from an unknown number. 3 short, urgent sentences. Private service elevator. Code 8-0-8-0. Now, my heart stopped. The service elevator. The one for staff and deliveries. Before I could even process the message, my phone buzzed again. A second message from the same number. It was a picture. It was the white keycard she had given me in the kitchen, snapped cleanly in half. The old secret was broken. This was the ticket to a new one. The broken keycard was a declaration of war. The old rules were gone. I found the service elevator in a small, unmarked alcove at the end of a service corridor. It smelled of bleach and cold steel. I typed in the code, 8-0-8-0, and the doors slid open with a low hydraulic hiss, revealing a small, windowless box clad in brushed metal. The ride down was silent, stomach-droppingly fast, and utterly terrifying. This wasn't a guest elevator. It was a secret passage. When the doors opened again, they didn't open onto a hallway. They opened directly into the penthouse's cavernous utility closet. I stepped out into pitch-black darkness. The air was still and cold. All the lights were off. The inviting, seductive space from earlier was gone, replaced by a tomb. This place wasn't a sanctuary anymore. It was a hiding place. "Ava," I whispered, my voice swallowed by the immense, dark room. She emerged from the shadows of the master bedroom, a silhouette against the faint glow of the city outside. As she stepped into a sliver of moonlight, I saw her face. It was pale, stripped of all artifice, and on her upper arm, just below the sleeve of her silk blouse, a faint, angry bruise was beginning to form where Marcus had grabbed her. The sight of it hit me like a punch to the gut. The danger was no longer an abstract concept, a risk of professional ruin or social embarrassment. It was physical. It was real. It had a name and a face and hands that left marks. We stood there in the oppressive silence, the space between us charged with the fallout from the rooftop. She had been hurt. I had been a coward who stood by and let it happen, armed only with a flimsy lie. And then, my own world chose that exact moment to intrude. My phone vibrated in my pocket, the screen lighting up the darkness around us with its insistent glow. The name on the screen was Chloe, my girlfriend. A video call icon pulsed expectantly. It was Thursday night, our scheduled call. She was 3,000 miles away, finishing her residency. She was my anchor, my reality, the life I was supposed to be building. Ava saw the name. I saw her see it. I saw the flicker of something, resignation, pain, in her eyes before she looked away. Chloe's smiling face filled the screen, waiting for me to answer. My thumb hovered over the green icon. This was my out, my chance to answer the call, step back into my real life, and leave this dangerous, intoxicating mess behind forever. I looked from the glowing screen, the face of my stable, predictable future, to Ava's haunted face in the dark. Without another thought, I pressed the red button, silencing the call. Then, I held the power button down until the screen went black. A definitive, irreversible act. I had just hung up on my life. I had chosen this darkness. The gesture, small as it was, seemed to break something in her. A shudder went through her body. "He doesn't love me," she whispered, her voice cracking. "He owns me. For years, he's controlled every part of my life. My money, my friends, everything." She looked around the dark, empty penthouse. This was supposed to be my escape, my secret. I've been funneling my own commissions into this place for 2 years, piece by piece, where he couldn't trace it. It was my one way out. She finally looked at me, her eyes glistening. "And you almost got caught in my mess." Her confession hung in the air, raw and devastating. She wasn't a predator. She was a prisoner building a secret escape tunnel. Suddenly, a car alarm blared from the street below, a shrill, piercing shriek that made us both jump. Ava rushed to the massive window, peering cautiously through the edge of the blinds. Her body went rigid. "Oh God," she breathed. I joined her, my heart pounding. Down on the street, 50 stories below, a single car was parked across from the building's main entrance, its headlights off. Marcus's car. He wasn't chasing her anymore. He was waiting. He had seen my car in the garage. He knew I hadn't left. He was laying a siege. We were trapped. The building was no longer a fortress. It was a cage, and he was watching it from the outside. Ava turned from the window. Her fear from the rooftop now burned away and replaced by a white-hot, reckless determination. "He thinks he has me cornered," she said, her voice trembling, a dangerous cocktail of fear and fury. "He thinks I'll just wait here until he gets bored or decides to come back up and finish what he started." She walked toward me, closing the distance between us until we were inches apart. Her eyes, shining in the dark, were blazing with defiance. "But he's wrong." She reached up, her hands tangling in my hair, and pulled my mouth down to hers. The kiss wasn't tender or seductive. It was desperate, angry, and profound. It was a choice, a rebellion. It tasted of wine and fear and the point of no return. When she finally pulled back, her breath was ragged. "Stay with me," she whispered, her forehead pressed against mine. "Stay until morning." It wasn't a question. It was a challenge, and we both knew I would accept. We didn't sleep. The night was a long, whispered vigil spent in the cavernous master bedroom. We sat on the floor, our backs against the cold glass of the window, and watched the tiny, menacing shape of Marcus's car 50 stories below. The adrenaline of the confrontation slowly leached away, leaving behind something quieter, more profound. We talked, not about our lives outside this room, but about the lives we wished we had. We were two strangers trapped in a glass box, suspended between the glittering, indifferent city and the single, obsessive point of light from the man waiting below. The danger didn't fade. It simply became part of the atmosphere, like the low hum of the building's climate control. Sometime in the deepest, darkest hour before dawn, the fear finally broke and gave way to a reckless calm. The feeling of being trapped was replaced by the feeling of being hidden. This wasn't his cage. It was her fortress, and she had invited me inside. I stood up and pulled her to her feet. We walked to the center of the room, to the king-sized mattress still wrapped in its crackling plastic. There were no words. We didn't need them. In the pre-dawn gloom, with the threat of him still watching from the street, we lay down. It wasn't an act of passion, not like the desperate kiss from before. It was a quiet, deliberate claiming of the space. It was a rebellion, an act of profound and silent defiance against the man who thought he controlled her. It was the final, definitive test of the soundproofing, and in the absolute, perfect silence we found our answer. As the first, faint fingers of dawn began to paint the sky in shades of gray and pink, we lay under a sheet we'd found in a closet, the plastic crinkling softly beneath us. "What happens when he comes back?" I whispered, watching the light slowly fill the room. She didn't look at me. She stared at the ceiling, her expression calm, resolved. "We'll be gone," she said, "but we'll come back. This is our place now." It was the final term of our deal. Not a happily ever after, not a dramatic escape into a new life. It was a choice. We would live in the secret. We would thrive in the stolen moments. The danger wasn't an obstacle to be overcome. It was the foundation of what we were building. 1 month later, I was officially moving in. The lobby of the building was a controlled chaos of professional movers, cardboard boxes, and the smell of fresh tape. My old life, the sensible furniture, the books, the posters from college, looked small and out of place in the building's opulent marble-floored entrance. And there was Ava. She stood in the center of it all, a clipboard in her hand, dressed in a crisp, immaculate white blazer. She was the picture of professional authority, directing the movers with a cool, detached efficiency. To anyone watching, she was simply the high-end real estate agent overseeing the building's newest resident. She saw me and walked over, her public smile firmly in place. "Everything going smoothly, Mr. Hayes?" she asked, her voice loud enough for the moving foreman to hear. "Perfectly, Ava. Thanks for being here," I replied, playing my part. She held out a small, elegant box. "Your official keys, and the fob for the main garage." She placed the box in my hand, her expression one of polite, professional warmth. "Welcome home." As her hand drew back, her fingers brushed against my palm. For a split second, I felt the cold, hard press of a thin piece of plastic being slipped secretly into my hand. I closed my fist around it without breaking eye contact. She gave me a tiny, almost imperceptible nod and turned back to her clipboard. I glanced down at my palm. It was the master keycard, the one she had used to lock me in the bedroom, the object of my initial fear, now a gift of absolute trust. That night, My old life was in boxes around me, but the apartment felt like home. The city lights glittered outside, a familiar, comforting presence. I stood in the living room, a glass of wine in my hand, the silence of the penthouse a welcome embrace. Chloe had called twice. I hadn't answered. I knew I would have to deal with that, with the wreckage of the life I'd left behind. But not tonight. Tonight was for this. I heard it then. Not a sound from the hallway or the main elevator. It was a quiet, almost imperceptible beep, followed by the low hiss of hydraulics, coming from the utility closet. A sound no one else in this building would ever hear. I turned as the brushed steel door slid open, revealing Ava's silhouette standing in the frame.